Welcome to Workplace Straight Talk. I am your host, Gloria Carter Hicks. Because some things need to be said about the workplace, I am saying them right here at Workplace Straight Talk. Look for new episodes on the fourth Monday of each month. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to Workplace Straight Talk. I am your host, Gloria Carter Hicks. I am also the president and CEO of Hicks Carter Hicks, a full-service award-winning performance improvement company helping clients build better workplaces. We focus on people, culture, and business. And Workplace Straight Talk is an extension of the work that we do at Hicks Carter Hicks. So, what are the other reasons why I started Workplace Straight Talk? Well, I wanted to be able to talk about the realities of the workplace that employees often experience and they may not be comfortable talking about. And also, I wanted to discuss the forces that shape our modern workplace today. Those forces are internal and external. And we're going to be talking about one of those forces and topics shaping the workplace today. Our first episode is of the series, Deception, Disruption, and Direction in the Workplace, the 3Ds. Now, that topic is DEI, and this episode is the Upside-down World of DEI, because it is extremely different today, what we're talking about with regards to DEI, compared to how we were supporting and talking about it just 5 years ago. So DEI is not a new concept. We all know that. It has evolved over the years, but it is quite controversial and highly debated right now because of the climate that we are in. So really, my goal is not to try to convince you, not to try to sway you in any way, but to really just talk about some of the things that businesses are having to deal with. So I'm going to cover several perspectives. First, think about the business as a whole. Owners, presidents, CEOs, people in the C-suite, trying to make decisions right now about how do you proceed with DEI. If you already had a program, do you stay the course? Do you change? Do you move DEI programs and DEI initiatives into other departments? Do you eliminate them? Do you pull back? Do you reduce your efforts? What do you do? Because our climate today is challenging that. And so what do we do? And then if you are business to business or business to consumer, what does your customers think? What are your employees expecting? How much commitment do they want to see or don't they want to see? There are a lot of decisions that businesses are having to make, and basically understanding the new regulations and laws around it or what's evolving. So those are some challenges, and those are some discussions and strategies that businesses are having to think about. In the midst of that, you have employees that are expecting you also to treat them with dignity and respect and create an environment where they are included. And so now let's talk about what HR has to do, because I'm an HR professional as well as a business owner, and I have direct reports. So I'm wearing all of these hats. So from an HR perspective, we're thinking about compliance. We're always focusing on people and culture and the evolving needs that our employees may have. Over the last few months, HR people have been attending legal webinars. We've been listening to podcasts. We've been reading our news articles, attending the Society for Human Resource Management events around this topic of DEI and D&I, and we're trying to figure out what to do. And so that's HR. The other part of that are managers. Okay, managers, your role is to create an inclusive culture, lead people, and also get results, manage your operations. And in the meantime, you're trying to figure out what is DEI as well. You might have even received training on it that said, here's what DEI is about. But those days are changing too. So let's take the employee population. Regardless of what you want to call it, whatever businesses want to do, what is important to employees, that they work in an environment where they are respected, they are treated with dignity, they feel welcome, they can come to work and be their authentic selves as much as you can be your authentic self in the workplace. And they want to just feel like they're valued. And so, in order to do that, we've got to be thinking about if we make these changes with DEI that's meant to do all those things for people, what will it look like? And so we're still trying to figure that out. The verdict is out right now, but there is help along the way. Now, I'm going to talk about some things around employee regulations, but I will only touch on that very lightly because I am not a lawyer. I'm an HR professional. And if you want more details about what's happening with DEI, talk to your HR and talk to your employment people about it, your employment attorneys. But some of the things I'd like to do today is demystify what is DEI, because the reason we're in this spot right now has a lot to do with some of the things that people think DEI is, but it isn't. First of all, diversity is about everyone. The definition, the meaning of it, what it includes is broader and broader than it ever has been. There are some that think it's only about race and gender, and in particular, people of color and women. Yes, it's inclusive of those groups, but it has evolved to be much more, and that might be where the gap is. We are talking about every single employee. Every single employee is different and has similarities as well. And if we start seeing differences as being difficult, then that's going to be a struggle because being different is a gift to your organization. And we have similarities that we should leverage and think about how to build better work relationships. So, diversity is about everyone. Now, let's take equity. That word has gone up in flames, so much so that people don't use it that much anymore. They've kind of changed their programs. They may have diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. They may have diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, or they may just have diversity and inclusion. Whatever nomenclature you use, just know that when you use the word diversity, equity, and inclusion, that can bring about conflict in some circles. But equity is a means to fairness, is what it is. But there is a perception that it means I am giving you something to get ahead that I don't get. I don't get a seat at the table and you do, and you're not qualified to be at that table. Or you're only at that table because you fit in a certain group. And so equity is just, it's too convoluted right now. So we're going to move on from equity, but I need you to know it's a very controversial word in the stream of things as we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. But it's meant to be fair to everyone. Everyone should have an opportunity to get nurturing, mentoring, development in an organization. Everyone should have an opportunity to be hired based on their qualifications. Something else, I'm going to talk about inclusion, because inclusion is an action word. It is where we as leaders and team members should be creating an environment that is conducive to people feeling like they are valued and respected, welcomed, and wanted in the workplace. And if we create an environment that respects people, gives them opportunities, that listens to them, that does not judge them, that lets them be their authentic selves, then guess what? We have created a place where people feel like they belong. And that's what we want. And so diversity, everyone. Equity, a means to fairness, but recognizing that some people think they might be losing something for someone else to gain, rather than we're trying to treat everybody fair, is really what we're doing. And inclusion is about creating a culture of engagement and respect. Now, let me debunk some of the things around hiring because there are some spaces and some places and spaces people believe that you're just hiring for quota purposes. You're just trying to hire based on surface diversity because someone looks like fits into that group and you feel compelled to hire them. You do. Okay, this is where I said I'm not an employment attorney, but quotas are illegal. You need to be hiring people based on job qualifications. What business what business that you might own if you owned a business would just hire people because of what you see and because you said, I need to check a box because I don't have someone in this group or that group, and I just need to check a box. That's irresponsible to your business, your stakeholders, your shareholders, your employees, your customers. And it is just a flawed recruiting and hiring practice, and businesses don't do that. Hire quotas. If they do, that's a risk they're willing to take, but I don't know many businesses willing to break that law and take that risk. Now, call your attorney, because like I said, I'm not an attorney. But as an HR professional, I know we would speak up if we thought that was happening. Now, next, if we are hiring diverse candidates, then they must not be as qualified. Now, since we said diversity is everybody, does that mean if we're hiring diverse candidates that everybody we're hiring is not qualified? I don't think so. Again, we need to be looking for qualified, diverse candidates, and diversity means everybody. So let's talk about where do we look for people? Well, we need to cast that net really wide to go out and find a lot of talent that's qualified for our business. We're in a global economy. It is extremely competitive in the business world. And even if you're in the nonprofit world, the services that you provide to people, that's important. You want the best people to do that. And if you're a for-profit business, you have a responsibility as well to make sure that what you provide and produce for your customers is the best. When you want the best talent, so I say, put yourself in the shoes of a business owner if you're not, and ask yourself, would you really do some of these things just to check boxes? And let me just say this about checking boxes just to hire people because they fit into a certain group. Nobody wants to feel like they were not hired for their knowledge, talent, skills, abilities, competencies, qualifications, that they were just hired because of how they look or what group they fit in. People bring much more to the table than what you see on the surface, but 90% of the time they're treated by what people see on the surface. So I want you to just think about this the next time, that comes up. What you see is not what you know. So if I don't get a chance to interview, you will never know what my skills and qualifications are. You might see it on a resume, but it doesn't necessarily mean who I am until you talk to me. So when we're casting the net broader, wider to bring in more people, we do need to validate they have the qualifications in order to do the job and not just hire because they fit into a group. And the other part of that too, just because we hire people who are diverse, and if you're focusing strictly on surface diversity and making an assumption they're not qualified, that's not the right assumption to make. And so I want to debunk those rumors. Now, let's get on to disruption, because we have talked about deception and misinformation. I've tried to now get us ready for disruption, because we're in a world right now, we're in a time right now or whatever we thought about diversity, equity, and inclusion being like traditionally, we're going to have to change that mindset. You might have to alter it, modify it, change the nomenclature around it, do whatever you think is necessary for your business. You know your culture better than I, but we know we have to think about our culture. And that's not just internal, that's external, that's brand, that's a myriad of different factors that makes up what our business is and who we are. But we're always going to be dealing with disruption of some sort. And disruption is not always bad. Disruption can bring about creativity and innovation. But I want you to think about how we really got into a very deep conversation around DEI in the last couple of years, especially the last 5 years, as it relates to COVID. COVID heightened our awareness around the disparities and the inequities that were happening in communities. And so, because of that, all the things that were going on with COVID, all the things that were going on with social unrest, and all of those things happening, businesses began to take a closer, deeper look at diversity, equity, and inclusion. Not that they hadn't done that before, not that they had not put money and all of those things into diversity and had chief diversity officers and diversity strategies and plans and initiatives. That had been happening long before COVID, but COVID just heightened awareness. And so companies were putting money and people and other resources in place to address the issues. Let me just be clear. That pendulum is beginning to swing back. What that means is that the money, the staff, you're probably already seeing some of those things go away. Do you integrate diversity, equity, inclusion into other parts of your business? Do you eliminate those positions? You are already seeing those things happening. And so the pendulum is swinging in a different direction. And we have to pay attention to that. And as businesses, we want to mitigate risk and we want to think about where is the right place to be. And we need a strategy to do that. And so just like we had disruption with COVID that got us into focusing more on diversity than we ever probably had before, we are now in a different period in time where we have to think about our business, our customers, our employees, our brand, and make a decision on how we're going to do this work. Now, let me say this. The common denominator happens to be people, because nothing is changing as it relates to what people expect in terms of being treated fairly, feeling that they are valued, having an opportunity to share their opinions, to be able to speak up safely without retribution, to be respected. All of those things still exist. So whatever we call diversity, equity, and inclusion, being kind and nice and respectful and helping people feel welcomed and giving people a great culture to work in, that is not going out of style. So, do you need DEI to do that? That is your question to answer. So, the next thing, now we move from disruption to say we need to have a plan around this. And so, what does that plan kind of look like? What are our priorities? Well, something that's interesting that I think businesses should think about as they try to navigate in this new road that we're trying to travel. Don't forget to ask your employees what they think and what are some of their recommendations. I can remember back to 2020 when we as a business, we were trying to decide, what's going to happen. We're dealing with COVID. I didn't try to answer all of those questions myself. I asked employees on our team, what do you think we need to do? What kind of technology do we need? How do we need to offer our services? What do we need to do differently? Because diverse opinions, did I ever talk about that? Opinions is a diverse thoughts and opinions happens to be important. And so this might be a time to say to employees, hey, we need your thoughts on this too. We still value you. We still believe in you. We still know how important it is to make sure you have a good culture to work in. We want you to remain engaged. Tell us how we might be able to do this. And you're going to have to pull in your HR people. You're going to have to pull in your employment attorneys and any other resources that you might need to come up with this strategy. Because at the end of the day, we do not want to be out of compliance. We want to always be in compliance with what the regulations say we should be doing. And so have a strategy. So let me break down some things in terms of just a summary of what I have said. It's always important to focus on qualifications when you're promoting, when you're developing, mentoring, nurturing people. Focus on performance, focus on the job description, focus on the qualifications. When you're hiring people, focus on the same thing. But I would say if your qualifications are not fair, if your job description may not be audited to be fair, pay attention to those things, but apply those rules fairly to everyone. Respect and diversity in all forms. You may not agree or disagree, but in all forms, it exists. And so let's not just think about it very narrowly. Let's think about it pretty broadly in terms of what diversity is. The more diversity we have in an organization, we might have more conflict. But if conflict is good and productive and brings about a better business and better resources, let's bring all those minds together. Everyone should practice fairness. I don't really care where you are in the organization, frontline, C-suite. Everybody has a responsibility to be fair and respectful to everyone else. As businesses, as supervisors, we cannot discriminate. And so I don't want you to think about DEI so much as politics or quotas. I want you to think about it as respect, fairness, and inclusion, and creating a culture where businesses and employees can collaborate together and thrive. So whatever the name is, whatever the program is, reimagine what it might be, because the common denominator of people is going to stay the same. So our next podcast is Civility and Respect Reboot. And we're going to somewhat continue with this topic, but let me tell you, civility and respect, it's a part of diversity, equity, inclusion, but it's separate. It operates on its own. What I mean by that, it's never out of style and out of fashion to be civil in the workplace and to be respectful of your employees. Now, we have different philosophical beliefs. We have different values and how we see things, and that is okay. But it is not a license to be mean and rude and disrespectful to people. I don't have to necessarily like you or agree or adopt what you believe in, but I do have to respect you at work. And we are going to talk more about that in the next episode of Civility and Respect in the Workplace, or Civility and Respect Reboot in the Workplace. Now, if you would like to send me some information about what I've said, you may agree or disagree. If you want to send me your thoughts, feel free to do that. Here is our website and the podcast, and here is also our email. Disagreements are also a part of diversity, and I welcome that. But most importantly, I thank you for your time and attention for tuning in. And I do hope that you will listen to our next podcast, episode number 2, Civility and Respect Reboot. We will be publishing our podcast the last week of the month. The 4th Monday of the month is when we will publish our podcast. New ones, there may be episodes, 1 or 2 or 3, just depends. But stay tuned for the 1st or the 4th Monday of the month. Thank you. See you later. Bye.